Now, there is little, if anything, that Urban Meyer has not accomplished as a major college football coach. Once Urban Meyer got his shot at the Rose Bowl, his Buckeyes pulled through with a 28-23 win over Washington in what is expected to be Urban Meyer's final game as a major college football coach. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Rose Bowl. Still the granddaddy of them all, matching the Big Ten champion and the Pac-12 champion for the first time in the last few years, as Ohio State again defeats Washington, leading and dominating for most of the game 28-3 before holding on. The Huskies came back to make it close, to make it interesting, even if they never had the ball with a chance to win. They cut it to 28-23 before the Buckeyes held on. So again, Urban Meyer wins a Rose Bowl in his first ever appearance in the Rose Bowl. I heard it stated a number of times in the last month that people were surprised that Urban Meyer has never coached in the Rose Bowl. Well, considering that Ohio State and considering that he's only been with the Buckeyes for 7 seasons, so take away this year, take away the probation year of 2012, you only have 5 opportunities to get to the Rose Bowl. Considering what the structure of college football has been since Urban Meyer first ascended to Bowling Green, then Utah, and then more specifically getting shots at these kind of games at Florida and Ohio State and the structure of the BCS and then the college football playoff, there's been few chances for first an SEC coach and then under the current system to get to the Rose Bowl. And that's, of course, one of the major reasons why, because his teams at both Utah and then Florida and then Ohio State have obviously made it to major bowl games over and over again. His teams at Ohio State have done nothing but make it to major bowl games in 7 seasons. That's been the accomplishment each and every year, going to a New Year's Six or a college football playoff, finishing in the top 10 every year, and of course, entering this game at number 6 in the country. Georgia losing, the Buckeyes should finish number 5, if not past Notre Dame at number 4 in the country when the final polls come out after the national championship game. In this one, it was Dwayne Haskins and company starring in the first half. Haskins threw for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. That means that Dwayne Haskins has thrown for 52 touchdowns this season. That shatters the Ohio State record, the Big Ten record, one of the highest marks in the history of college football. 52 touchdown passes against a defense that came in giving up just 9 touchdowns through the air this season in Washington. Mike Weber had a tremendous game. Ohio State, reliant on the pass, gave him the football. Once they hit about the second or third drive, started to just run straight up the middle with the power running game, something that left Ohio State football during their struggles mid-season, but was established late in the campaign with J.K. Dobbins and with Mike Weber. But Weber started in this game, 15 carries for 86 yards. J.K. Dobbins, maybe the more explosive back, but maybe not as quite as consistent. A runner and producer of yards this year, only ran 7 times for 24 yards. But Mike Weber hammered this Washington defense, especially in the first half and in the third quarter. This much heralded Ohio State receiving corps that was 5 or 6 deep with very accomplished players. Maybe they didn't make the most clutch catches in the world. Maybe they disappointed at times. Maybe didn't come through necessarily early in their careers, had some letdowns in some big games, but the productivity of these guys and just the sheer fact that 3 of them were selected by their teammates to be captains this season speaks volumes. Paris Campbell caught 11 passes in the Rose Bowl for 71 yards and a touchdown. He finishes with the single-season record for Ohio State in number of receptions with 92 this year. Johnny Dixon had a touchdown. KJ Hill figured in prominently, and he had one of the more prolific seasons in the Big Ten the past 2 years in receiving out of the slot. Terry McLaurin was the deep threat for the past few years and a tremendous special teams player. And we'll also mention Austin Mack, who had the huge catch last season against Michigan as the Buckeyes came back from 6 down once Dwayne Haskins hit the field in relief of J.T. Barrett, completed the 3rd and 14 that may have saved the season for a Big Ten championship for Ohio State. Austin Mack hurt earlier this season, missed most of 2018. Benjamin Victor, who had a 24-yard reception among 2 catches in this game, will come back as Ohio State's leading receiver. The defense woke up against Michigan, played well against Northwestern for the most part, played extremely well, saved the final 12 minutes of the game. The Ohio State defense finally performing up to the standard you would have expected based on the talent level of this defense, with a couple sacks, 6 tackles for loss. And again, they had only given up a field goal until 12 minutes left in the game, up 28-3. At that point, Washington drove down. There was a 4th and goal situation, and Urban Meyer was extolling the Ohio State contingent to urge on the defense to keep Washington out of the end zone. And the thought process at that point was probably that let's preserve not the shutout, but keeping Washington out of the end zone, and let's close out this win in resounding fashion. Not that Washington's going to come back and score 3 touchdowns, and this is going to be a ball game at the end. So Ohio State did give up the touchdown there after they had held Myles Gaskin to 24 yards rushing in the first half and held down Jake Browning and company. The man-to-man coverage was exceptional, especially from Kendall Sheffield and Jeffrey Okudah. You also had, of course, Chase Young up front, along with Draymond Jones, 2 of the better players in the nation up front. Tyreek Smith, a player that I was happy to have interviewed here during the recruiting process when he was still considering Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Penn State. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, you can catch that interview. Just do the search on the channel page. But he figured in prominently, and he's certainly going to be one of the young and up-and-coming players for the Buckeyes up front. Brendan White really matured as a top-notch safety throughout the season, had some big plays for the Buckeyes as well. On the Washington side, they showed their limitations on offense. And it wasn't just against Ohio State. It goes back to the Pac-12 championship game and scoring no offensive touchdowns in that game in defeating Utah 10-3 on a pick 6. So the offensive limitations and issues continued. Jake Browning, obviously not a mobile quarterback, doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, doesn't have the playmakers downfield that he had a few seasons ago with the likes of John Ross and with Dante Pettis. A good receiving core, Myles Gaskin in the backfield, and some other players that are good players but not explosive players on the perimeter for Washington. Browning had to throw it 54 times, completed 35, and again, they got things jump-started with 12 minutes left and put a scare into the Buckeyes, scoring a few touchdowns and starting to get some receivers, Austin Bryant in particular, loose in the secondary for big gains against Ohio State's secondary. Gaskin started slow, as I mentioned. They bottled him up, but he started to get loose and finished with 121 yards rushing on 24 carries. Myles Gaskin joins Ron Dayne as the only player in college football history with 4 1,200-yard seasons. He's the only player in Pac-12 history with 4 1,000-yard campaigns. Myles Gaskin and Jake Browning with 53 starts at quarterback, 2 of the most prolific stars in the history of Washington football, hang them up after the Rose Bowl. Browning leading this team to 2 Pac-12 championships and the 2016 college football playoff appearance, which brings into question also, of course, that Chris Petersen has certainly elevated this program back to prominence as the #1 program, I would say, decidedly in the Pac-12 right now. Oregon has a chance under Mario Cristobal to challenge. David Shaw and Stanford will always be there. And, of course, with the recruiting prowess in Southern California and the name brand of USC, Clay Helton has the opportunity to turn that program around with the young quarterback in J.T. Daniels. But right now, it's Washington, the most consistent winner in the Pac-12, having won 2 of the last 3 Pac-12 championships. The other team made it to a Fiesta Bowl, but against the elite teams outside the Pac-12, it's still a struggle. They've lost 3 consecutive bowl games to Alabama, Penn State, and Ohio State in New Year's 6 games, the Peach in the playoff, the Fiesta Bowl last year, and, of course, the Rose Bowl tonight, and losing to Auburn. in week 1 that pretty much took the Pac-12 in regards to consideration for a playoff and put them on the back burner. This game also about Chris Petersen, and we mentioned the fine job that he's doing in Washington. I did question the one decision that he made, trailing 28-17. So his team had battled back with 2 consecutive touchdowns, faced a 4th and 8 with just 4 minutes left in the game. Just 4 minutes left in the game with 2 timeouts, and he chose to punt. Now, Ohio State helped out the Huskies by throwing the ball a couple times when they received it and went 3 and out. So he got the ball back about a minute 10 later in about the same field position. But 4th and 8, not 4th and 25, he decided to punt. I thought that was rather strange at that point. Down 11 with 4 minutes left to play. Still, he's doing a remarkable job in Washington, and again, they are the program right now in the Pac-12, but they have many challengers. This game, of course, about Urban Meyer. His record is fortified, cemented in college football history. He has the best winning percentage in major college football, modern college football. Knute Rockne and Frank Leahy, look them up. You'll find black and white pictures. Notre Dame legendary coaches from way before World War II. So post-World War II, which is kind of a landmark of sorts, of course, historically in the country, but also concerning college football. So we're looking at the last 70-plus years of college football. Urban Meyer has the best winning percentage after stops at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, winning 2 national championships and 1 with the Buckeyes, in finishing at 83-9. Nick Saban, of course, with the most national championships, with the opportunity to pass Bear Bryant with 7 national championships. That is going to be the standard for most college football analysts and for most fans. The most consistent winner, without a doubt, is this guy, Urban Meyer. And because of the college football playoff structure and the BCS structure, there is something to be said for the opportunities given to particular teams and programs in attempting to win a national championship. Of course, Ohio State had an argument to gain a playoff spot in 2015, 17, and 18, but was not chosen, and so those opportunities weren't there. Still, 3 national championships for Urban Meyer, and again, the most consistent winner with the best winning percentage in college football history in the modern era. Looking ahead for Ohio State in 2019 under Ryan Day, I'm disappointed by this schedule. I rail on teams all the time who do not play a Power 5 schedule. No Power 5 opponents. At this point, I believe everybody should be playing 2 Power 5 opponents. Ohio State's schedule is abysmal for 2019. Games against Florida Atlantic, albeit Cincinnati is a group of 5 team out of the American Conference, very strong, coming off a bowl win over Virginia Tech at 11-2, ironically under Luke Fickell, who of course was the interim coach at Ohio State in 2011. The Buckeyes' other non-conference game against Miami of Ohio. And for Washington in 2019, a similarly weak non-conference schedule, highlighted by a trip to BYU and also dates against Eastern Washington and Hawaii. You know what the drill is here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will be previewing these teams throughout the offseason and getting you set for the finale of the recruiting cycle, the first week of February on into spring practice with the rankings and previews and talk about these teams for 2019. Would love to get your comments about whether it's Chris Petersen, Urban Meyer, the Washington program, Ohio State, college football, whatever's on your mind. Leave it in the comments section right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.